I thought she was just my neighbor, until I found the note in my dead father's handwriting under her door. I arrived at the old house the day after we buried my father. The weather was gray enough to match the mood. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just bleak. I parked behind the sagging garage and sat there for a while, staring at the peeling paint and the cracked window above the kitchen sink. This was the house I grew up in. Now it was mine. Somehow, that didn't feel like a win. The key still worked. The place smelled like dust and rust, that distinct scent of abandonment. Dad hadn't lived here in years. He'd moved in with that woman in Sarasota. Still, nothing had been touched. It was like the place had been frozen in time since I left for college and never looked back. I dropped my bag by the stairs and wandered through the house. Each room was a landmine of memory. The coffee stain on the carpet from when I was 12. The chip tile mom covered with a rug when they still pretended to fix things together. And the basement. God, I didn't even want to go down there yet. Instead, I headed for the mailbox. That's when I saw her. She was out in her garden again. Same gray hoodie, same dark braid tucked into the collar, same expression, half curious, half guarded. I'd seen her at the funeral, standing in the back, saying nothing. I hadn't recognized her then, but she clearly recognized me. She gave a small wave now. I nodded, didn't smile. Didn't think you'd be back so soon, she called across the fence. Her voice was low, calm, too calm. Didn't think I'd have to be, I replied. She didn't say anything else. Just went back to clipping deadheads from the flower bed. I didn't know her name. Growing up, she hadn't lived there. That house had cycled through a string of tenants, retirees, renters, young couples with loud dogs and louder arguments. She was new, or newish. My dad had mentioned the neighbor once in passing, something about her being quiet, kept to herself. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tried organizing Dad's paperwork, but it was a nightmare. Old tax forms, half-finished crossword puzzles, post-it notes that made no sense. At some point, I found myself in the attic, pulling open boxes like they held answers instead of more questions. Around midnight, I stepped outside for air. That's when I saw it. A note, slipped under the neighbor's door. The porch light was off, but I saw the white rectangle on the dark welcome mat. Something about it stopped me cold. The handwriting, it was familiar. Tight, angular, all caps. My stomach dropped. I'd seen that writing my entire childhood. Notes on the fridge, reminders on receipts, labels on boxes. My father's handwriting. But he was dead. I'd watched the casket lower into the ground 2 days ago. I didn't knock. I didn't say anything. I just stood there for what felt like a full minute, staring at that door. And then I did something I shouldn't have. I picked it up. It wasn't addressed to anyone. Just a folded sheet of lined notebook paper. I opened it. Inside were 6 words. She doesn't know. Don't tell her. That's it. No signature. But I didn't need one. I knew that hand. And suddenly I couldn't breathe. Who was she? What didn't she know? And why the hell was my dead father still sending notes to the woman next door? I went back inside, locked the door behind me, and stared at that note like it might start bleeding. Something was wrong. And I was about to find out just how deep the rot went. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those 6 words scrawled in my father's unmistakable handwriting. She doesn't know. Don't tell her. By morning, I was pacing the kitchen floor like a ghost. The coffee pot wheezed on the counter, untouched. I kept glancing at the note, now sealed inside a Ziploc bag like some kind of evidence. And maybe that's what it was. Evidence that my father had been hiding something until the very end. Something involving the woman next door. At 9 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. I threw on a hoodie and walked out the front door, trying not to feel like I was creeping into some crime scene. Her curtains were drawn, blinds tilted just enough to let the sun in, but I could see movement inside. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. A moment later, I heard footsteps. The door creaked open, and there she was, in a faded t-shirt and jeans, a dish towel slung over her shoulder. "Morning," she said, not surprised to see me. I held up the note, still in the plastic. "This was under your door last night." She frowned, reaching for it instinctively, then hesitated when she saw my face. I read it, I admitted. She took the bag, pulled the note out, read it silently, and then blinked. Just once. "You recognize the handwriting?" I asked. Her eyes met mine. Calm. Too calm. "Yes," she said. "It's your father's." That stopped me. "You're not surprised?" "No," she said, folding the note neatly and slipping it back into the bag. Come in. Her house was nothing like ours. No clutter, no dust. Every surface was clean, intentional, lived in. She motioned for me to sit at the kitchen table, then poured 2 mugs of coffee like we were old friends meeting for brunch. I'm Maggie, she said. I figured you didn't remember me. I don't, I admitted. Did we know each other? You were 6, she said. The summer I moved in next door. I shook my head. We moved out when I was 7. My mom took me across town after the divorce. I know, she said. Your dad stayed. I waited. She didn't speak. So what was this? I asked. Were you two involved? She didn't answer right away. Just took a sip of coffee. Then she said, it was complicated. Of course it was. Everything with my father was. The man was a maze of contradictions, generous and cruel, distant and smothering, devoted and secretive. You could never pin him down. And now he was gone, but somehow still orchestrating things from the grave. He left you a note, I said. After he died. Maggie nodded slowly. He must have written it before the stroke. He'd been unsettled the last few weeks. Jumpy, like something was catching up to him. What didn't he want you to know? She stared at her coffee. Her voice dropped an octave. I think he was trying to protect me. From what? She looked up then, and this time, something flickered behind her eyes. Not fear. Not sadness. Something closer to guilt. I don't know, she said. But I didn't believe her. Not completely. Did he visit often? I asked. He never left, she said quietly. What? Maggie leaned back in her chair. After your mom left, he stayed in that house. And he came over every day? Sometimes for dinner. Sometimes just to sit on the porch. We talked. A lot. For years. I felt something sharp twist in my chest. Were you in love? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. If we were, we never said it out loud. I looked down at the table. There were faint scratches in the wood, like someone had been tracing the same shape over and over with a knife or a key. He told me once, Maggie said, that some truths don't need to be spoken. They just sit between two people, like smoke. You don't name it, because naming it makes it real. And real things can break. I nodded slowly. That sounded like him. But then I asked the question I hadn't let myself consider until that moment. Was he my only father? Her head snapped up. What? Was there any chance? Is that what this is about? A secret? A lie? Maggie looked stunned, like I'd punched the air out of her lungs. She shook her head fast. No, not that. But there is something, I said. She didn't answer. Tell me, I pressed. Please. Maggie stood up, walked to a drawer, and pulled out a yellowing envelope. She held it like it might burn her fingers. I wasn't going to show you this, she said, voice tight. But I think he wanted you to find out eventually. She handed me the envelope. My name was written on the front, in the same sharp, unmistakable handwriting. I opened it. Inside was a photo of me, at age 6, sitting on a swing set. In this yard, Maggie standing behind me, holding the swing chains. Her expression was protective, like a mother. I looked up at her, throat dry. What is this? She swallowed. He asked me to take care of you. When? She looked down. Right after your mom left. My blood went cold. Wait, are you saying? No, she said quickly. Not like that. I didn't raise you. But for a few months, while he got his life together, you stayed here. With me. He said it was temporary. But you were always kind to me. And then one day, he took you back. Said she wanted custody. Said it was better that way. I stared at the photo again. The memory was gone, wiped clean. But there I was, smiling, like I belonged. He told me to forget it ever happened, Maggie said. So I did. But he didn't, I whispered. No, she said. He never did. The room was silent. And then the doorbell rang. Maggie's face went pale. He said if you ever showed up, they would too. Who? She turned toward the door, trembling. His other family. I didn't move. Neither did Maggie. We both stared at the door like it might explode inward. Her hands were clenched against the edge of the counter, knuckles white. I could hear the soft hum of the refrigerator, the rhythmic tick of a clock on the wall, and beneath it all, the unmistakable weight of something approaching. Don't answer it, I said. But Maggie was already walking toward the door. I followed close behind, my pulse hammering. She paused with her hand on the knob, then turned and gave me a look, a silent warning, or maybe a plea. Who do you think it is? I whispered. She didn't reply. When she opened the door, I instinctively stepped to the side, half hiding behind the frame. But it wasn't some stranger standing there. No suit, no badge, no mafia goon like my imagination had conjured. It was a woman, mid-30s, tall, auburn hair pulled into a tight bun. She wore a navy trench coat over a crisp blouse and slacks, like she'd come from a boardroom. Her eyes, sharp, cold, went straight to me. "You're Peter," she said, not a question. I nodded slowly. "And you are?" She looked at Maggie. "He doesn't know? Tell me what?" I asked, stepping fully into view now. The woman sighed, like this was already a hassle. "I'm Claire. Claire Anderson." Anderson. That name had sat wrong in my mouth. Foreign, but familiar. "I'm his daughter," she added. I blinked. "Whose?" "Your father's," she said plainly. "Different mother. Same handwriting." I felt like the ground tilted beneath me. "No," I said. "Yes," she replied. "We didn't know about each other until 3 years ago. He showed up one day, said he'd made mistakes, wanted to make amends." I stared at her, trying to absorb the words. "You're lying." She pulled a photo from her coat pocket, just like Maggie had. This one was newer. My father, older, grayer, standing beside Claire in front of a white townhouse. He was smiling. She wasn't. "Why are you here?" Maggie asked stiffly. Claire looked at her, then back at me. "Because I think he left us both something. And it's not money." I narrowed my eyes. "What then?" Claire hesitated. Then she stepped forward, reached into her bag, and pulled out a slim black notebook. Leather-bound, well-worn. She held it like it was a grenade. "He kept records," she said. "Of everything. Letters, names, accounts, secrets. There are pages in here about you, about this house, and her." Maggie stiffened. "Why give this to me?" I asked. "Why not keep it?" Claire studied me for a long beat. "Because he wanted you to decide what to do with it." I didn't reach for the notebook. "I don't believe you," I said. She smirked. "You will." Then she turned to leave. She didn't say goodbye. She just walked back down the driveway and disappeared around the corner like she'd never been there. When the door clicked shut, I turned to Maggie. She looked hollow. "I didn't know about her." "I believe you," I said, even though I wasn't sure I did. I picked up the notebook. It was heavier than it looked. Inside the front cover, my father had written one line. "If you're reading this," I ran out of time. Below that, the entries began, page after page of confessions, timelines, initials, cities. The first full entry was dated 1995, the year my mother left. I sat down slowly. Maggie sat across from me. I read the second line aloud. She found out about the child. I looked up at Maggie. Her face was pale, and suddenly I wasn't sure if the child meant Claire or someone else entirely. "Keep reading," she whispered. I did, and what I found next nearly made me drop the book. I turned the page. My throat went dry. March 17th, 1995, she found out about the child. Not Claire. The other one. I told her it was over. I lied. The ink was sharp and slanted like he'd been writing in a rush. The lines beneath it blurred, but I kept reading. My father had scribbled half-legible thoughts about payments, lies, summers at the lake, and something he called the arrangement. "What arrangement?" I muttered. Maggie leaned in. "Keep going." She threatened to tell Peter. Said it was only fair. I told her it would ruin him. He was too young, too soft, not ready for the truth. Soft. That word hit me harder than it should have. Another entry. M paid off her credit card again. She doesn't ask questions. God help me. I looked up at Maggie. "M, that's you." Her expression was unreadable. She didn't deny it. "I thought you said." "I didn't know about the others," she said. "Not really. I thought maybe I was the only one, or the last one, but I guess I was just one of the ones who stayed." I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger, not grief. Something Messier. "He used you." She smiled bitterly. And I let him. My hands trembled slightly as I turned another page. My father had included a list, initials, dates, amounts. $2,000 here, $500 there. Most were labeled C.A. Claire Anderson. But one caught my eye. A different set of initials. J.D. 6,000, hush payment, November 2006. J.D. I looked at Maggie. "Do you know a J.D.?" She paled. "Jenny." "Who's Jenny?" "She lived 2 streets over. Single mom. Quiet. She and your dad, they were close. But she left town years ago. I haven't seen her since." "Could she be the one?" "She had a kid," Maggie said slowly. "Little boy. Quiet, shy. Always reading. I thought. I thought he was from her ex-husband. The next line in the notebook hit me like a freight train. Jenny's boy is mine. Doesn't know? Can't know. Would destroy everything. Maggie's too close to Peter. Can't risk it. I sat back hard in the chair. The room spun a little. He had another kid. I whispered. Maggie's hand covered her mouth. Her voice cracked. Oh my God. Half-sibling. I said, dazed. Somewhere out there. And he paid her to keep it quiet. Maggie looked horrified. Peter. But I wasn't listening. My mind was racing through old memories. 4th grade. A school play. A quiet kid named Jamie who always sat alone during lunch. Could it have been him? Was that the reason my dad never showed up to parent-teacher conferences? Was that why he was always working late? I turned to the next page. This one was different. Less frantic. Neater. To whoever finds this, I'm sorry. I didn't plan to leave such a mess. But maybe it's time you all stopped pretending I was someone worth protecting. If you're reading this, you're stronger than I gave you credit for. I hope you'll make better choices than I did. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find each other. It wasn't a confession. It was a dare. A challenge to untangle the wreckage he left behind. And I suddenly knew what I had to do. I need to find him, I said. Who? The kid. Jenny's son. Peter, that's not. He's my brother, I snapped. Half-brother. Whatever. He deserves to know. Maggie looked away, then nodded slowly. Start with the library. Jenny worked there part-time. Records, addresses, maybe someone remembers where she went. I stood up, notebook still in my hand. Where are you going? She asked. To dig up a ghost, I said. Again. But as I stepped outside, something stopped me. Claire. She was parked across the street, still in her trench coat, watching. And when our eyes met, she smiled. Not warm. Not kind. Calculated. She knew. She'd known all along. And she was waiting. I crossed the street without looking. I didn't care about traffic or neighbors watching from their porches, or the way Claire sat perfectly still behind the wheel like she'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. She rolled the window down before I could knock. Find anything interesting in the notebook? I gritted my teeth. You knew about him. The other kid. Jenny's son. She didn't even blink. Of course I did. Why didn't you say anything? Claire tilted her head, eyes steady. Because I needed to see what kind of man you were. What the hell does that mean? It means, she said, Dad never believed you'd do anything with the truth. He thought you'd bury it, just like he did. Let it rot in the attic with the rest of your grief. My fists clenched at my sides. But you didn't, she added. You read it. You're here. That means something. I stared at her, unsure whether I was being tested or manipulated, or both. Do you know where Jenny is? Claire reached into the glove box and pulled out a worn manila folder. She held it out the window. I didn't take it. Why are you helping me? She shrugged. Maybe because I think he owes us both answers. And maybe I'm tired of being the only one carrying his secrets. I took the folder. Inside was a scanned ID, 2 old photos, a last known address in Dayton, Ohio, and a name. Jamie Dean. J.D. Born February 2001. Mother's name, Jennifer Dean. My father had been making payments for almost 2 decades. Quiet, consistent, off the books. Claire had highlighted every one. How long have you known? I asked. Since his funeral, she said. I found a second notebook. This one had the numbers. The names. You, me, him. You waited this long to say something? She smiled thinly. I wanted to see if you'd find it yourself. Looks like you did. This isn't a game. No, she said. It's family. That word hit like a bruise. Raw. Tender. I'm driving to Dayton tomorrow, I said. You can come or not. But I'm going. Claire nodded. I'll be ready. And just like that, she started the engine, pulled away, and left me standing there with a folder full of wreckage and the terrible realization that I barely knew who I was anymore. That night, I didn't sleep again. I read every page in that folder. Every payment. Every address. Every letter Jenny had written and never sent. Claire had scanned those too. One stood out. Dear Peter, I wonder if you ever knew about him. If you'd recognize him if he walked past you on the street. He has your father's eyes. But your stillness. You're quiet. He deserves better than silence. He deserves to know he wasn't a mistake. I couldn't breathe reading it. I pictured a boy with my father's eyes, living somewhere in Ohio, growing up wondering why his dad never showed up for anything. Never wrote. Never called. I owed him more than a name. The next morning, Maggie packed me a lunch like I was heading off to school. She hugged me tight at the door, like she knew something might break. Be careful, she whispered. I got in my car. Claire was waiting at the end of the block. I followed her, mile after mile, hour after hour, as the city gave way to cornfields and highway signs and finally a quiet stretch of suburban road on the edge of Dayton. We pulled up to a modest brick house with a green lawn and a crooked mailbox that said Dean in faded letters. There was a car in the driveway, a bike leaning against the porch. Claire looked at me. You sure? No, I said. But I'm here. And then the door opened. A woman stepped out. Late 40s. Same auburn hair. Eyes like mine. She froze when she saw us. Then she whispered, Peter? And behind her, through the screen door, a boy stepped into view. Not a boy. A young man. Tall. Shoulders like Dad's. And eyes that made me want to collapse right there on the lawn. He looked at me like he already knew. Like he'd been waiting. And I had no idea what to say. Peter, Jenny said again. And this time it wasn't a question. It was a breath, an exhale wrapped in 2 decades of silence. I nodded, numb. My voice didn't work. Claire stood just behind me, silent and still, like a shadow that refused to move. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. This wasn't her moment. Jenny stepped off the porch slowly, cautious but steady, eyes locked on mine. I didn't know if you'd ever come, she said. But part of me hoped. Behind her, the young man, Jamie, stepped forward. His expression was unreadable. Not cold. Just careful. I'm Peter, I said hoarsely. I guess You're the reason Dad never came around, Jamie said flatly. The words punched the air out of me. What? He crossed his arms. Don't pretend you don't know. You were the golden child. The one with the house, the name, the Christmas cards. I was the secret. I was the debt. That's not. I started. Jenny turned sharply. Jamie. He looked away, jaw tight. But he didn't walk off. I didn't know, I said. I swear to you, I didn't know about you until last week. Jamie stared at me, trying to read the truth in my face. I let him. I had nothing to hide. You were just a kid, Jenny said softly, stepping between us. This isn't your fault, Peter. None of this is. Claire finally spoke. He wrote about you, she said to Jamie. A lot. You were never just a check. Jamie raised an eyebrow. Oh, great. So I was a paragraph in someone's guilt journal. I winced. He had Dad's edge, too. Do you want to see it? I asked. The notebook. Jamie hesitated. Jenny touched his arm. It's your call. He looked at me, then at Claire, then back to me. Finally, he nodded once. Fine. We sat around their kitchen table, me, Claire, Jamie, Jenny, and I laid the notebook in front of him like it was some ancient relic. Jamie opened it slowly, flipping through pages like he was peeling scabs. He stopped at one entry, a photo paper clipped to the page. It was him, age 10, holding a baseball bat in a backyard. My dad stood behind him, hand on his shoulder. Jamie stared at it for a long time. Then he asked, he kept this? He never let go of anything that mattered, I said, even when he should have. Jamie didn't reply. He just kept turning pages. Finally, he asked, so what now? And God? Wasn't that the question? I looked at Claire. She gave a small shrug, like don't ask me, I'm barely holding it together too. I don't know, I said honestly. But I'd like to start by not pretending anymore. Jamie closed the notebook gently. That's a start. He didn't smile. But he didn't leave the room either. Jenny poured coffee. Claire made a joke about Dad's terrible handwriting. And for the first time in days, I felt something settle in my chest that wasn't rage or regret. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But maybe it was the first step toward it. Later that night, Jamie walked me out to the car. Why'd you come? He asked. I leaned against the door. Because he left a mess. And I was tired of pretending it wasn't mine to clean up. Jamie nodded. Then, after a pause, he asked, You ever play catch? I smiled. Not in a long time. Bring a glove next time, he said. And that was it. Not forgiveness. Not family. Just possibility. And for now, that was enough. We drove back in silence. Claire didn't speak, and I didn't press. I think we both needed time to process what had just happened. Not because it was some dramatic confrontation or tearful reunion, but because it wasn't. It was real, raw, awkward, and still, somehow, exactly what it needed to be. When we pulled into my father's old driveway again, the sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the porch. I shut the engine off, but didn't move. Claire stayed in her seat too, staring out the window like she was watching a different life unfold. You were right, I said finally. He didn't think I'd go through with any of this. Claire nodded once. Neither did I. That's comforting. She cracked a smile, faint but honest. Don't take it personally. Most people don't touch the rot. They just paint over it and pretend it's a new house. I looked at her. You've done this before? She shrugged. Enough to know the script. I'm not interested in scripts anymore. That made her glance at me. Eyes sharper now. Good. Then you might be ready for what comes next. What's that? Claire opened her purse and pulled out a small flash drive. She held it between two fingers like it was radioactive. This was in his safety deposit box. Bank in Sarasota. I didn't open it until after the funeral. I took it. It was lighter than it looked. I rolled it between my fingers. What is it? Claire hesitated. A recording. One file. Dated 2 months before he died. I didn't say anything. I just looked at the thing like it might bite me. He made it for you, she added. I blinked. What? Claire's voice softened. I think he knew you wouldn't forgive him. So he didn't try to ask for that. But he wanted you to hear something. I didn't ask how she knew. I didn't question her motives. I just nodded and climbed out of the car. Inside, the house felt different. Lighter, maybe. Or maybe that was just me. I plugged the drive into my laptop, opened the file. His voice hit me like a sucker punch. This is for Peter, he said. Silence. Then a sigh. If you're hearing this, it means I didn't get the chance to say it myself. No surprise there. I've always been better at running than talking. The chair creaked. I could hear a soft clink, maybe a glass. Ice. Whiskey, probably. His go-to when he didn't want to feel anything. I messed up. Not just once. Not just with your mother. But again and again. I hurt people. I buried things. And I let you grow up thinking silence was strength. The audio clicked slightly, as if he adjusted the mic. You deserved a better father. One who didn't hide behind paperwork and half-truths. One who didn't ask other people to patch the holes he left. Another long pause. Your mom left because of me. Not just the affair. I was already gone before that. Emotionally, I didn't know how to be with people who expected honesty. Maggie, Jenny, even Claire's mom. They were all collateral in a life I never had the guts to live cleanly. I couldn't breathe. But you were different. You never asked for anything. You just watched. Quiet. Observant. And I mistook your silence for forgiveness. He cleared his throat. I'm not asking you to forget. Or even to understand. But if there's one thing I hope you carry forward, it's this. Don't be like me. Don't carry other people's weight because you think it's noble. It'll crush you. Let people earn you. Let them see you. Even if it hurts. The recording crackled softly, like a vinyl record winding down. I loved you, Peter. I just didn't know how to show it without ruining it. Click. The file ended. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen. Not crying. Not angry. Just hollow. Like he'd finally emptied out everything he had, and there was nothing left for me to push against anymore. Later, Maggie found me still at the table. She sat down, didn't ask what was on the drive. She didn't have to. You okay? She asked. No, I said. But I think I'm done bleeding. She smiled sadly. That's something. I nodded. And then, for the first time since this all started, I closed the notebook. And I didn't feel like I was betraying anything. I felt like I was finally ready to start my own story. The next morning felt different. Not lighter. Just clearer, like the fog had lifted enough for me to see the wreckage for what it was. Not something to escape. Something to navigate. I walked the perimeter of the house, dragging my fingertips along the cracked siding, the warped gutters, the old screen door that still squeaked like it remembered being slammed in a fight. This place had held so much. Anger, grief, secrets, silence. But it also held pieces of me. Maggie was already in the garden, her sleeves rolled, dirt under her fingernails like always. She didn't say anything when I walked up, just handed me a trowel and kept working. I knelt beside her. We dug in silence for a while. Just two people who'd been burned by the same fire, but somehow kept showing up to rebuild. Eventually, I said, he recorded a message. She didn't react. She just asked, did he say what you needed to hear? No, I admitted. But he said what he could. Maggie nodded once, and that was the end of that. Later that afternoon, Claire came back. Not to push, not to pry, just to talk. We sat on the porch, the three of us. Jamie wasn't there. He'd gone back to Dayton with a promise that we'd stay in touch. Not out of obligation, but maybe curiosity. Like he wanted to see what kind of brothers we could be if we weren't built on lies. Claire lit a cigarette, something I didn't know she did. She offered me one. I shook my head. You know, she said, exhaling. Most of my life, I thought I was the ghost. The one he never wanted to admit existed. I looked at her. You weren't the ghost. No, she said. That was him. And somehow, that was the truest thing I'd heard all day. He'd haunted all of us. Not with malice. With absence. With unfinished conversations. With decisions made in back rooms and sealed envelopes and whispered apologies no one ever got to hear. But we were here now. Still standing. Still speaking. Do you think we're broken? I asked. Claire smirked. Of course we are. But so was he. So is everyone. The difference is, we're not pretending anymore. I nodded. So what do we do now? She flicked ash off the porch railing. We figure it out. Together. Or not. But we stop hiding. A beat passed. Maggie wiped her hands on her jeans and said quietly, I never stopped hoping you'd come back, Peter. Not just for the house. For you. That almost broke me. I looked away, throat tight. I think I'm going to sell it, I said eventually. They both looked up. This house, I clarified. It's not mine anymore. It never really was. I need to let go of what I thought it could be. Claire nodded slowly. And where will you go? I shrugged. Maybe back to the city. Maybe somewhere new. I just know it's time. You're not running, Maggie said. You're choosing. And that mattered. That distinction. That freedom. That night, I made one last pass through the house. Packed the few things worth keeping. The photo from Maggie's envelope. The notebook. The flash drive. A jacket that still smelled like him. Not because I missed him, but because it reminded me who not to become. Before I left, I slipped something under Maggie's door. It wasn't a note. It was the key. The next morning, I drove until the highway turned unfamiliar. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't escaping anything. I was heading towards something, even if I didn't know what it was yet. Because some stories don't need neat endings. Just the courage to begin again.